He's come up with a figure, £50 billion. That's a very serious figure. But it's also a rather mysterious one, because to get to anything like that, Reform would have to make serious cuts to welfare entitlement. Now, of course, that can be exactly what he proposes, but if so, they would be cutting Reform seats and Reform target seats.
To Reform UK, which is promising the most comprehensive overhaul to the welfare system in a generation. In plans that are going to be set out tomorrow, Reform says it would cut £50 billion from the benefits bill and scrap the disability payment system known as PIP if the party was to form the next government. Speaking to one of the Sunday papers, the party's Treasury spokesperson, Robert Jenrick, said that the current system is suicidal empathy and a strange perversion of compassion. The plans include making companies pay for any employees off sick for the first 2 years. Businesses with more than 5 employees would have to take out insurance to cover it, with a cut in national insurance contributions paid by employers offsetting the cost of the measure. Let's get the thoughts of the Times columnist Fraser Nelson, who takes a special interest in the welfare sector. Hi there, Fraser.
Hi.
What's your hot take then on Robert Jenrick's plans?
Well, we're going to get the policy tomorrow, along with the press conference. So all we've really had is his article in the Sunday Telegraph today. Now, he's come up with a figure, £50 billion. That's a very serious figure. But it's also a rather mysterious one, because to get to anything like that, Reform would have to make serious cuts to welfare entitlement. Now, of course, that can be exactly what he proposes, but if so, they would be cutting Reform seats and Reform target seats. Welfare and Reform votes correlate very strongly together. All of the Reform targets are the seats with the most PIP claimants. And Nigel Farage's own Clacton constituency is one of the biggest PIP claimant seats in the UK. So it could well be that the Reform has come to tell hard truths to his voters, that this is unsustainable and that these constituencies are not going to be able to be given the welfare they've got right now. But I think that would be quite a break for Reform. It wouldn't be very populist. It would be incredibly unpopular. But perhaps is all as it seems. Now, either they're going to save lots of money and hit their target seats quite hard with the kind of cuts that Labour tax rises simply would not impose. Or this is not as it seems. And we'll find out which of those two tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, the government is forecast to spend more than $300 billion on social security and welfare over the course of the next financial year. It's 10% of GDP and 23% of government spending. And I think everyone is agreed that there have to be cuts somewhere. What do you think of the model of trying to use business or leverage business to encourage people back into work and pay for the disability payments or the sick payments for people who do take time out?
Well, I think there's a lot of merit in that idea, and that's what happens in the continent. The Dutch do that, Germans do that. And this has been one of the more effective models, where you give companies the incentive to make sure their workers stay in work. And we tend to do that a lot better than the government. But the problem is that's a big bureaucratic burden to business. We saw what happened when Rachel Reeves even increased national insurance by 1 pence. There were lots of jobs affected by that. So if you're going to ask employers to basically take on this aspect of the welfare state, that will be a serious move for them, and it will have employment implications. So, it's entirely plausible. It's quite serious. To be honest, it wouldn't surprise me if the Labour government proposed something similar when they come to the end of their proposals on this. But make no mistake, this would be a massive upheaval, and it would have costs which I'd be surprised if they'd been properly reflected in Reform's figures for this.
Well, Labour have already started sort of winkling that particular attack line, saying that their £50 billion claim is fantasy economics built on stripping support from disabled people and shifting costs onto employers. I mean, when PIP was brought in, there was a significant amount of outrage from the people who were on the sharp end of this and the difficulties they had getting payments. Anything like this is desperately emotive, but we all agree something's got to be done about the welfare bill, and Reform can claim that they are making hard choices and they are making tough decisions because they want to show that they're a party that can make these decisions if they get elected.
That's exactly right. I mean, Robert Jenrick says in his article that Labour tried to shave a little bit off PIP, and there was a parliamentary rebellion, and they weren't able to do it. But that's because so many Labour MPs worked out there were more PIP claimants in their constituents than the size of their majority. Now, those are the crude political dynamics here, but they apply to reform too. If reform's going to win these seats, are they really going to present themselves as the grim reaper of welfare reform? It'd be quite a brave thing to do. But they'll be wide open to a Labour attack. But if reform come in, then your PIP, which is by about £140 a week for most people, is going to be cut, perhaps even abolished. That's a very difficult sell on the campaign doorstep. Now, but I don't. So I'd like to know what Robert Jenrick intends to say to people who be worried that if they vote reform, they're going to lose their welfare. And perhaps he's going to say, and there'll be a lot of merit in this, look, I'm sorry, but sacrifices have to be made, and we can no longer afford to pay disability for ADHD, for stress, for personality disorders. These are some of the things that you can get PIP for nowadays. But right now, of all the seats that will be most affected, reform seats and reform target seats are number one.
Which is, I presume, a calculation that they may or should have at least made before they go forward to announcing this policy tomorrow.
There's a bit of a debate in reform. I mean, some people inside reform say, look, our voters aren't the welfare claimants. Our voters are the strivers in the seats that have got high welfare. So they're annoyed about the guy next door who's got his curtains drawn until 1 p.m. And so, but the thing is, I'm not so sure about that. If you actually look at the reform members, when they're polled, they're something like 63% of them say that they want welfare reform. That's up from 25% of Labour. So yes, they're enthusiastic about it, but it can be welfare reform for thee, but not for me, because quite often they can be claiming sickness benefits themselves. Reform voters are the most likely of any party to claim a sort of health-limiting long-term condition. So this can be the problem. What they tell opinion pollsters that they want welfare reform might not translate to what they actually vote for. But that having said, perhaps this is the moment that reform is going to create a cross-party consensus, because Labour knows this can't go on. So perhaps Andy Burnham won't attack him. Perhaps Labour, the Tories and Reform will all agree that PIP needs fundamental reform, and therefore they're not going to fight each other on this. Now, if they do that...
Can you imagine, Fraser?
Well, I to be honest, it's a push, but when you look at the most successful welfare reform chapters in world history, in Wisconsin in America, in the Clinton Gingrich reforms, in the James Purnell and the Chris Grayling reforms back there, you would have a cross-party consensus on welfare. It can break out now and again. And I think Andy Burnham realises he's got to make radical change on welfare. It's very difficult to do if an opponent's going to accuse you of being cruel and heartless. But if there's a kind of amnesty, if Reform would attack Labour because they intended more cuts, then perhaps Labour won't attack Reform either. Now, I'm not saying it's likely, but I do believe that something like this, a cross-party consensus on welfare, is the only way the welfare reform is going to get done. I would not have Robert Jenrick down as the person to start that consensus. I thought it might be more Alan Milburn, who in his Leaks review has been very kind of open-hearted. He's been very catering to Conservatives, to Reform, to Lib Dems, everybody. I would have thought Milburn was the more likely consensus builder, not Robert Jenrick, but maybe Jenrick's going to be the first mover. We'll see.
OK. Fraser, great to speak to you as ever. Fraser Nelson, Times columnist, with his thoughts on the Reform announcement, which is going to, I'm sure, be dominating the headlines tomorrow.